Welcome, everyone, to Cards on the Pond, a baseball card podcast. I am Nate, here with Jimbo.
How we doing?
And we are here after our special episode in the middle of the week. We are here to talk about the MLB Pipeline Top 100 numbers 1 through 10 today.
1 through 10.
We had a little bit of a conversation, Jimbo and I, about if we should start at 100 through 90 and count down, or if we should start at 1 through 10 and count up. And we decided, maybe not as mutually as I'd have liked, but I think kind of mutually, that it was a little bit more fun to get to the lower numbers. So we're going to save that for later so that we have something to look forward to. You know, the 1 through 10, everyone knows about the top 10 prospects in baseball. Most people know about the top 20 prospects in baseball. So we are going to start there today. And we will show the top prospect list from MLB Pipeline. And here it is. So 1 through 10, Jackson Holliday, AA, 19 years old. Jackson Chourio, AA, 19 years old. Paul Skeens, AA, 21 years old. Dylan Cruz, AA, 21 years old. Ethan Salas, AA, just got called up to AA as well. So did Paul Skeens. So did Dylan Cruz, 17 years old. Junior Caminero, 20 years old, AA. James Wood, 20 years old, AA. Evan Carter, 20 years old, AA. Jackson Merrill, 20 years old, AA. And Jordan Lawlar, 21 years old, AAA. You notice a theme there, Jimbo?
I think AA is where it's at.
AA is where it's at. And also being young. Not often is the youngest dude in the top 10 21 years old. There's usually like a 22-year-old or a 23-year-old snuck in there somewhere. You know, some old college bat. But here we are, 19 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old, and a 17-year-old in Ethan Salas. Now, some things I should point out before going name to name. Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, Ethan Salas, they don't have cards. So for our intents and purposes, a baseball card podcast, not much to talk about here. So we probably won't talk about them. Paul Skeens obviously looks like an ace, should be an ace, probably will be an ace, will be frustrating. Dylan Cruz looks like Bryce Harper 2.0, should be Bryce Harper 2.0, probably will be Bryce Harper 2.0. Maybe not that good because Bryce Harper was a league of his own, but he's going to be a really good outfielder. And Ethan Salas, there is actually a lot of interesting things about him. Defensively, he's supposed to be amazing. Offensively, 60 hit tool, plus power as well. So, like, they expect a lot of things out of this kid. And the fact that he's 17 in AA is insane. I don't think he had a ton of at-bats in high A before they moved him to AA, which is a little bit confusing. But it's just an incredible story. He was the top international signee, and he looks like it. But because he doesn't have cards, there's just not much to talk about here. Now, he could get cards in the new Bowman Chrome set. I'm not sure. I haven't seen a checklist. I haven't actually looked at anything, so I'm not 100% sure if he will have cards in the Bowman Chrome set or not. If he does, we'll make an amendment to this podcast where we'll put out a whole new one on Ethan Salas. But for the time being, since those guys don't have cards, we'll be talking about Jackson Holliday, Jackson Chourio, Junior Caminero, James Wood, Evan Carter, Jackson Merrill, Jordan Lawlar. All right. So Jimbo, let's start with Jackson Holliday because I've got something to show you here. But give me a moment because I forgot to pull it up, so it's gonna take a little bit of time. All right. So if you go to Fangraphs, get past all the ads, you go to the minor league leaderboard section. You can go to prospects and then to the board. You click on it, and then down here will be minor league leaderboards. You can go here and you can edit, and you can do age, and then go greater than or less than or equal to, and put, I don't know, 21. All right, every player under 21 that has been playing in the minors. And then I go to advanced here, and you click sort by WRC+. What you'll notice is that There's a couple guys ahead of Jackson Holliday, but they're all in the DSL. And some of
Yeah.
them are 21 years old, 19
They don't
years old.
count. They don't
That
count.
doesn't count, right? And then you go down, and there's guys in the DSL in the complex league, but 20 years old in the complex league doesn't really count until you go to Abimelech Ortiz, who's 21 and a pretty good year, but also a 29% strikeout rate. And then you keep going, and then you get to Kobe Mayo, who's also 21, right? And all the rest of the guys. Oh, and Thomas Sagasi, double A, who our friend down on the farm. Oh, wait, that's 60. Okay, we're good. So then you go Junior Caminero. So you have to go almost 30 guys before you get the next qualified A-ball or above hitter in WRC plus in Caminero. And then Jet Williams, which is incredible that Jet Williams is sitting right here. In fact, I didn't know he's sitting that high. And he has a 20% walk rate to 21% strikeout rate.
He's been on fire lately.
Jet Williams looks like he's about to be moving up those prospect lists big time.
He's on fire right now.
Yeah. Also 19, Feyron Lorenzo. And then Samuel Basalo, 18, Orioles prospect. And then my boy Luke Adams doesn't have any cards, 19. And then you got Xavier Isaac, 19, which is incredible because he didn't look like a first-round talent when the Rays drafted him, and now look at him. And then you got Thomas Sagasi, who our friend down on the farm said that based on exit velocity readings and stuff he's heard, he thinks Thomas Sagasi should probably end up being like a top 40 prospect.
Yeah, I was high on him pretty early too. I forgot that he went to St. Louis.
Yeah, traded in the Jordan Montgomery deal. But so you kind of get the gist here of what I'm going for. It's that not only is Jackson Holliday good, he's leaps and bounds better than every other player in baseball. And it's not like it's like, oh, he did all what?
Stat wise.
And it's not like he just did it all in single A and single A and then struggled in double A. Here are his double A numbers as a 19-year-old, 27 games. 14% walk rate, 18% K rate, 333, 425, 528, 398. BABIP is absurdly high, obviously, but he's been carrying those all the way through. 158 WRC plus as a 19-year-old in his first taste of double A. In fact, he's been so good, I've seen rumors that the Orioles could call him up to the majors this year, a year after getting drafted out of high school.
That's crazy. I don't see that happening. I think that's more of just building up the excitement because they have better options even at where he's at skill-wise right now. But that would be insane. Well, I mean, I don't know. They did that to Wander like the year before he got called up for the playoffs. They just had him up there to like see, like to get the feel of it. And they did that to Nick Castellanos. They do that with a lot of players. Nick Castellanos did that to get like the jitters out.
Mm-hmm.
But like consistently playing.
Now, here's a question. They're going to be in playoff contention. Does that get the jitters out?
I mean, yeah. I think if anything, they bring him in for like pinch running, or they bring him up because of the coaching staff there. You know, they have more coaching staff up in the majors, like with the Rovers and stuff, and have like a condensed.
I suppose if all you have to do is use up a 40-man roster spot, and you have September call-ups anyways, and you're not going to lose rookie eligibility, and you can still call him up next year if you want and keep that rookie eligibility for the sake of getting an extra draft pick, and you can minor league season is done anyways, and you can get him experience in the majors. I mean, if you think he's going to be up next year, you're using a 40-man roster spot on him anyways next year. So what's the difference of using it early this year? Okay, you don't get that 40th man, that project relief pitcher that you wanted.
Yeah.
Oh well.
It is interesting. He's having a great year.
He's amazing. It's insane.
I remember the first week of minor league, he was the one I wanted to watch the most because there was so much hype on him. There wasn't a lot of video on him. And I wanted to buy him, but I didn't at the same time. And then I watched like a week or two of him, and I was like, okay, it's time. So I personally have quite a bit of him. I still am the thing that I am always like hesitant on is when every time I watched him, a lot of the hits he had was because of bad defense. Who was that? League wise.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question before you go on. That's so many guys, though, is it not? In the
It is.
minors?
That's why. Remember we talk about the eye test, like the actual eye test, like watching like consistently game after game. It's like, okay, like I'm not saying he's a bad hitter at all. I'm just saying for the hype that he's at, and I think when he got to Double A and then he's proving it there,
Mm-hmm.
kind of was like, okay, I had red flags, and then that's what made a lot of the red flags disappear. Was seeing the better talent, seeing like, okay, because he started off in low A, right? So he exploded there. That's why like there I was like hesitant. I was like, dude, like he's always like he puts the bat on the ball all the time that a lot of these defensive guys just can't get to it or whatever. They're bobbling it bad. So a lot of that the stats are inflated. But once you got to high A, I was like, okay, he's really looking like a good hitter. Tapped in a little more of that power. And then Double A has been really interesting. But the thing that I think is most intriguing for Jackson Holliday's, you know how we always talk about selling on debut.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always a good time to sell a debut, but he's also one that's interesting where if you don't sell a debut, I think you're like, it's worth the risk too, because he's going to be on a team with protection. He's not going to have to be hitting in like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hole, whatever. They could probably put him at 7, 8th, or 9th. Let him inflate his stats, let him learn and do very well there. And that's usually those are the players I usually take off even after debut.
Yeah, when you have no, not to harp on the Brewers all the time, but you had a lot of guys get called up by the Brewers. Their offense is so bad, you need Sal Frelick to be performing in the 4-hole.
Exactly.
Right?
Like that's so tough to do. Like,
yeah. And he did. But like Jackson Holliday will not have that worry. They could slot him in the 9-hole and have him be the second leadoff because he's fast, right? And go from there.
yeah.
And anything he adds, sweet.
Yeah, and I think that is such a hard thing to like really forecast. Like it's not hard to forecast, but it's something that a lot of people kind of overlook. And I always tell people like think about if you played baseball in high school and you're on the freshman team. Like for us, our baseball, like I grew up in our high school was pretty good at baseball. But so think about it as in if you were a freshman in high school doing well your first couple games, and then they throw you in varsity, skip JV, and then but not only that, you're going to be hitting in the cleanup hole during like the last few games of the season trying to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, wouldn't that be insane?
Like I couldn't even imagine that. So that's my little tidbit on it. But I'm a big fan of him, and I think card wise, I think there's a lot of value left there because I think even if you just buy now and you hold till spring training, there's going to be so much hype from now until spring training.
I agree. And now the thing is, these prices, they are expensive. We're talking, I'm going to use Refractor PSA 10 because it's easier to find than base because I can type in $4.99 and PSA 10 is just the equivalent across the board. So I'm going to use this as my baseline for all of our prices today. Jackson Holliday PSA 10 autos. You can see the last couple sales there. 23, 25, 22, 56. July 9th, actually, 1,480. So that's a really healthy bump in price in a month for Jackson Holliday. That was a little bit lower than the rest. Not sure why. But it's still up from May, April. It's way more, it's $1,000 up from then. So, dude, the stud. I don't know if I'd call him up, but absolute stud. And we will move on to our number 2 prospect, Jackson Chourio. So you can see here, number 2, Chourio, 19 years old, Double A, outfield. And like Holliday, he is doing well in Double A once they got rid of the pre-tacked baseball. His overall numbers on the year, we can share those. His overall numbers on the year, coming from Fangraphs here, are going to be 281 in AA, 335 on base, 464 slugging, a 108 WRC plus. The big difference between him and Jackson Holliday, he's running a 317 BABIP as opposed to Jackson Holliday's 398. So those are still really solid numbers, all things considered. You're a smidge below an 800 OPS on the year as a 19-year-old in AA, 34 stolen bases, almost 20 home runs. 7% walk rate is right in line with his career. 19% K rate, a little bit lower than what he's been running those years. So that's a really good sign to see, is that he is going up in level, keeping the walk rate the same, decreasing strikeout rate. The power isn't there as much this year, but it's still above average. He's not running an absurd BABIP, so it's cool to see. And then also, if I can share Baseball Reference here real quick, because you can see the last X amount of days under their splits. You can see your 2023 batting splits. April 712, May 739, June 714. All of a sudden, July 1,164 OPS in July. Now, August has not been as good, 654 OPS. But it could also be he's kind of wearing down as the season's running along, because this is a long season for a 19-year-old that maybe hasn't played that many games in a season before.
He probably played winter ball too.
What?
He probably played winter ball too.
Yeah. And it gets really hot in the South. Not obviously he grew up in a hot area, but that kind of gets to you after a while. Heat. But he is doing well over the last 28 days, 803 OPS. Over the last 9 days, 875 OPS. So he has been starting to hit as the pre-tacked baseball went away, which is good. And
do you know the date that when they got done with the pre-tacked baseball?
At some point early July, I believe, but I don't have an exact date.
Okay, I pulled up the stats. It's incredible what the stats are just from July till now compared to what they were. Here, I have it.
Mean, he had 1,164 OP. He hit 388 in 94 plate appearances in July.
Okay, yeah, you have it pulled up there. I did Fangraphs has a cool on top. Oh, you're on Baseball Reference. I put it in the chat, the Fangraphs, and it has it broken down with the combined dates on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's nuts. What would his stats be if they just no pre-tack baseballs all season?
And it's only a 15% strikeout rate. Still similar, 6.6, not quite 7, but close. Yeah, his stats would be really good. 938 OPS since the pre-tack baseball went away. So Jackson Chourio, obviously, really, really good. Once that baseball went away, hopefully we'll get the call up to AAA near the end of the season so that we can start seeing him play there. And then next year, AAA, and then boom, MLB next year as a 20-year-old, which I don't remember the last time I saw a 20-year-old as a Brewer. I don't know if I ever really have.
Ricky Weeks.
Was he 20, though? He was a college draft pick that got called up for...
yeah, maybe he wasn't.
That was part of his contract. He could have been 20 instead of 21. I don't remember. Yeah. Let me look. Wait, I got to look this up now just to find out. Because he was part of the old guard that got put on he had to get called up as part of his contract. Yep, he's 20, 7 games.
Yep. But Jackson Chourio, one thing that's interesting about him is I think there's still with his cards, I do believe there's room to grow with that, just because I was comparing some of his cards to like Jordan Walker's before the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember I was running them. I was like, and Jackson Chourio is probably more, he's probably going to be more talked about than Jordan Walker, even though he was talked about a ton before the season.
So let's put this into perspective here. Chourio right now, $1,500 for a refractor PSA 10. 1,400, 1,500, 1,400, 1,200 July when he was kind of struggling a little bit, but July also 1,500. 1,750, 1,136, 1,300, 1,050 on a PSA 10 there, 925 actually. So they did drop under $1,000.
They were down big time earlier.
They're up to 1,550. All right. So it has moved significantly since the low spot. And it's about the price of where it started the season. Jackson Holliday is about $800 more expensive. But Jackson Holliday played shortstop. Do you think that there is $800 more in this card when compared to Jackson Holliday? Yeah, obviously Chourio has more power right now, but not the premium position, though Chourio can start it out as a shortstop. They just moved him to center field. What do you see with those two cards? Because obviously they're the number one and number two prospects in baseball. They're both named Jackson. They're both 19 years old. They're both in AA. They're both doing well, though Holliday better. But Holliday $800 more expensive. Obviously, number one pick in there has some effect on that. What would you rather have? Would you rather have Holliday for $800 more? Would you rather have Chourio for $800 less? Do you think Chourio can make up the distance? Let me know.
Yeah, personally, and I usually don't say this about the top guys. Usually I'm selling by now. But these two, I have a different theory that I've figured out, like kind of came to realize for this season was, but I would rather honestly, I'd rather have both, because honestly, Jackson Chourio, I'd probably rather have Jackson Chourio as the player for cards because of the power there. And I think he's going to put up more of like the stats that draw the attention. But Jackson Holliday has the protection in the lineup, the name, the position, but he doesn't have the power that I think people are building. Like Bobby Witt had the power.
Yeah.
Jackson Holliday, I don't think I think he'll be like a 15, 20 guy if he's real, like once he gets a little older. But I don't see him really putting in that type of numbers where it's like, okay, long term, it's tough, but the opportunity, like I guess situation is just so different. Because I think Holliday will be in the playoffs next year with a really good Orioles team.
Yeah, and I don't think Jackson Chourio will be in the playoffs because I think Burns is going to get traded. I would put that at like 99% chance. After this whole fiasco this past year, I think they take the prospects. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean Woodruff gets traded. If you can extend Woodruff, you have Freddie Peralta, who has been have you seen Freddie Peralta's numbers?
Yeah, but it's more of, it's like, not to do the whole Brewers breakdown on that. It's more of like do we see, like, just forecasting, like, and Topps is doing something, I feel like, year after year where they've been like picking a few prospects and they've been marketing them very well.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think they're going to pick more of the Jackson Holliday or the Jackson Chourio? Just in, like, if you had a choose.
Oh, it's going to be Holliday.
See, that's what, like, I would rather have Chourio as a player. Like, if I got to choose one for the Tigers.
Yeah.
But I think there's
unless they feel like they've overdone the Orioles, which is a possibility because it's been a lot of Adley Rutschman and a lot of Gunnar Henderson on stuff the last couple of years.
But maybe it's like they're the super team on the East Coast taking down the Yankees, the Reds. Or sorry, the Yankees and the Red Sox. Like, yeah. I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't think you can lose on either one. And in the past, I was never really too confident on buying cars when they got to this expensive. But I think what I was doing with Jackson Holliday when I was comparing prices is I was looking at Bobby Witt's old stuff, like before he debuted.
Oh man, that stuff was expensive. But that was also COVID era prices.
But that baseball never got pumped up like basketball and football. It never it never did that like it did for the other sports. Like it was the natural
But
cycle.
there was still people at home with no money to spend buying baseball cards that aren't now.
Yeah, but I mean, the people were still
I
buying the
mean, do
same.
you remember Fernando Tatis Topps PSA 10 base cards?
Yeah, but that's that.
Yordan Alvarez, Bo Bichette. I
But
can
those,
keep going with names. Eloy Jimenez. Like those prices skyrocketed with.
those are two different cards, though. You're talking about
No, I
like
understand,
top.
but
Those cards should have never like. What I'm saying with Bobby Witt, the same year after that, the same thing happened to, I don't know who was after Bobby Witt, top prospect. When was Bobby Witt? Last year, 2 years ago.
well, he's a rookie last year.
Okay, so last year was Bobby Witt. This year was Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker's stuff did just like what his was
Yeah,
doing. So
that's
like
fair.
it, but it followed suit. You know what I mean? Like the year before that, before COVID, it was Acuna, Soto. Like it fell in line. Now there was other stuff, the non-Bowman first. That's why I always talk about go Bowman first because it's consistent. The other stuff that was going up like crazy didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I
I
think
mean, look at Aaron Judge. Now, this was obviously last year, not not COVID era stuff, but like some of the most random cards in the world when he's chasing 60 home runs, going crazy. And
well,
now
that's
it's
true.
like, oof. Oh.
Yeah.
All right, we got to move on though because we've spent too much time on the first two here. So let's move on to number 3, which is not number 3 because Paul Skeens is number 3, and not number 4 Dylan Cruz, and not number 5 Ethan Salas because of what we mentioned at the start of the episode. But let's move on to number 6 Junior Caminero. Now, Junior Caminero is in a super interesting spot here. Because I'm trying to type out while talking. It's not working very well. Because of Wander,
Yeah.
right? Now we don't know anything about. We know what Wander did, or allegedly did, and I know that the Rays were apparently taking down everything Wander related from around the stadium. That being said, he hasn't been proven guilty yet, so we don't know anything. He could play again. He could not play again. If he does not play again, and again, I have no idea. I'm just on the outside looking in. If he does not play again, Junior Caminero is in an interesting spot because the Rays are still only like 2 games back of the Orioles for first place in their division. They're still one of like the top 5 records in all of baseball, despite all the injuries, despite Shane McClanahan going down now, and despite Wander being gone, and despite all the other pitching injuries they've dealt with this year, Jeffrey Springs, and so on and so forth. They are still right there for the division and for the playoffs. And if they're right there and they've got Junior Caminero sitting there, 20 years old in Double-A, hitting really, really well, I could see an instance where they're calling him up to be their everyday shortstop.
Oh.
I could see it.
I don't think they're going to put him at short.
You think Taylor Walls just takes over and call it a day? He can play shortstop.
Yeah, because I just know they just value defense like quite a bit. And I was just looking at Caminero. They've had him play some short this year, but it's primarily third base.
Yeah,
by a lot.
No, I'm not. Okay, so if it's not shortstop, it still doesn't matter because it still is. He's getting called up, right?
Yeah.
Sure. And so what's curious here is that short term, and you can see Caminero's stats here. Almost a 10% walk rate, 18% strikeout rate. You love that. 181 ISO. That's a little bit above average. 307, 371, 487 slugging, 125 WRC plus as a 19-year-old in his first taste of Double-A. Yeah, those numbers are amazing. Will they skip him over Triple-A? I don't know. But will they probably want a jolt after every bad thing that has happened to the Rays this year? Probably. Now, they do have is he Australian? what's the kid's name? That's
Curtis Mead.
Curtis Mead. They have Curtis Mead in if they want to put Curtis Mead at third and move players around to play, shortstop like Taylor Walls. That being said, if you're really looking for a jolt in the arm and excitement around your team, Curtis Mead isn't the guy that is exciting to call up. That's like the guy that you have and is really good, but I don't think it's going to create a ton of excitement. Calling up Junior Caminero would create an absurd amount of excitement for the Rays. And pretty much you can go through this list and anybody else they have, it's not going to matter. It's Caminero or bust from an excitement standpoint, right? So I could see him getting called up. And if he does, what's interesting is he seemed like, he was in line to potentially become, we've talked about this before, potentially become a number one overall prospect. And now, obviously, he's same age, same level as Jackson Holliday and Jackson Chourio. So, like, maybe not a huge likelihood, but if he went a little slower, and the Rays have been known to be a little bit slow on the minor league development system, potential to be the number one prospect, and then potential for card value to go up due to that. But now I think that might be less likely.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think he's getting called up at all because they called up this one kid. Well, first they called up Curtis Mead, and then they called up Jonathan Aranda.
Mm-hmm.
Like his stats aren't anything great in the major leagues, but he was doing great down in AAA, and I think he's more of a Rays type player. Well, he can play infield, multiple positions. But the kid that I think is the jolt of energy is this. I can't even say his name, but he was traded from the Texas Rangers. Oslevis Basabe.
They already called him up.
Yeah, but I think that's the jolt. Like they don't even have. I was just on their website, like on the 40-man. Caminero's not on the 40-man, and I doubt that they burned someone else's. Yeah.
No, don't get me wrong.
It's just not what they do.
I know they called up Basabe and everything, but I'm thinking from a perspective of everything has gone wrong. Everything has gone wrong this year. You have a chance to get a dude up who's 19 years old. Like imagine the hoopla that would surround that if Junior Caminero was called up. Like that's where my mind goes. Maybe not necessarily smart to call him up. Might not necessarily happen. But at least, and I know it's the Rays we're talking about, but there's at least a scenario in my head where I could see them saying, we need something more than Basabe, more than Mead to get people excited about this team again because they have been beaten down by pitching injuries and by Wander Franco.
They know that they don't get excitement anyways. They don't sell out even for playoff games when they are good. Like, that's just not how they think. Like back in the day, they would have done that with Wander because Wander was ready to get called up a long time. I just don't see it happening. I think if he was on a different team, absolutely that scenario would pop up. But the Rays are so consistent on what they do.
And it's worked for them.
Yeah. And I think that's why, I think there are three, the trio is the Jonathan Aranda, Oslevis Basabe, and then Curtis Mead, who just got sent down. But I think the Taylor Walls, he's on the IL, the 10-day IL. Yeah, he just got put on. And I think those will be the ones filling it.
Well, Taylor Walls is excellent defensively. He can fill in at shortstop more capably than anybody else. But
they'll platoon it, man. That's what they do. They platoon it. They put Walls in to start the game. When the starter gets taken out, they'll play matchups. They'll bring in your Harold Ramirez, your Luke Raleigh, and just play the matchups. That's what they're good at.
It is what they're good at. I don't know. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, it seemed like Junior Caminero might move up to 1, but now I'm thinking that he'll never get the chance. And even if he doesn't get called up this year, I still don't think he ever gets the chance to become the number one prospect because of age and level of the same guys ahead of him.
I just don't think they're going to call him up before the other ones. That's why I'm taking a bet on him.
Caminero, and he's
Yeah.
20. So
Like they're not going to rush him because they don't want to burn his service time. And the other teams, they're going to rush Chourio, they're going to rush Holliday. Skeens is going to be
they're
up.
not the Brewers aren't going to rush Chourio. You know how many outfielders they have ahead of him?
They're gonna
Endless.
They're gonna need him. They're gonna want him.
So here's the thing. They would have to rush him this year because next year is not the year they're trying to win, because it's the last year of contracts of Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, and Freddie Peralta. Maybe Freddie, I think, might have one more year after that. Unless they decide that they are keeping those guys, not trading them, and trying to win next year one last time, then I could see it. If Corbin Burns is gone, there's no chance they're rushing, because they have Sal Frelick, they have Joey Weimer, they have Garrett Mitchell, they have Christian Yelich, and they have Tyrone Taylor, who has been absolutely murdering the baseball in the last month. That's 5 guys for 4 outfield spots and a DH. They have it filled. So they're not gonna rush Jackson Chourio at all.
Opening day, Chourio for that draft pick.
Literally zero chance.
For the draft pick.
Zero chance.
I think that's what's gonna happen. I think it's gonna happen to all 4 of the guys beforehand.
I
1 through 4.
I know the Brewers, they like draft picks, but you know what they also like? They're poor and they're cheap, and they're gonna get 7 years out of Jackson Chourio and forgive the draft pick than getting 6 years and a potential draft pick if he can win Rookie of the Year.
But you don't think that they're going to try and trade some of the other outfielders to try and condense for like a starter or something? And
no, they're going to be trading Burns away for prospects. I think they're rebuilding. I think we're starting a rebuild next year, like a mini 1-year rebuild. I don't think there's any chance they trade away their guys. If there was a chance they were going to trade away guys, they were going to trade for Pete Alonso. This year, they didn't trade for Pete Alonso. I don't think they're going for it next year. And hence, I don't think there's any shot that, like, Chourio's not leapfrogging any of the guys in front of him, because all those guys have performed at AAA and at least somewhat performed in the major leagues. Joey Weimer has not performed in the major leagues from an offensive standpoint, but he leads baseball in like defensive runs saved in the outfield.
Sure.
So you're not going to get rid of him. So, like, I could see Holliday getting called up. I could see Caminero getting called up at the start of the year. It would be something crazy would have to happen for me to see Jackson Chourio get called up. So, a couple of major injuries would have to happen.
How long is Yelich there for?
Like another 7 years.
7 years?
6 years, something like that.
That's tough.
It's a long time. Let me get this.
It's okay, because we still got 6 other.
Yeah, we do. But I'm gonna grab it anyways for my own interest. 2024, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So the rest of this year and 6 more years. So he's not going anywhere.
Dude, that's brutal.
Well, he's hitting really well this year, so like I'm okay with it. If he keeps getting on base and hitting like he has been, I'm okay with it.
I'm not even
also
gonna scratch
that
the
dude
itch.
might win a Gold Glove this year. He's been reinvigorated defensively in left field. What?
James Wood.
James Wood. Let's move on. I agree. All right. Moving on. Number 7 here. James Wood.
Jeez, oh Pete.
Also 20. Also in Double-A. Also doing really, really well in the game of baseball. Real quick, just as an aside, Junior Caminero refractor PSA 10 autos, $830. Last one sold August 18th. 990 August 17th, 960 August 16th, 950 August 16th. So they're $1,300 lower than Jackson Holliday, or $1,400 lower than Jackson Holliday, and they are $600 to $700 lower than Jackson Chourio, which is interesting because he plays the infield, which you would think would be more important or more valuable than Jackson Chourio's outfield. But we're talking about the Rays here. And even with Wander effect of putting the Rays on the map, kind of, there have been prospects before. The Rays still haven't picked up in a way that you would expect their prospects to. And I still think that has to do with the fact that there's not really too many Rays fans. And I think a lot of players' values are held up by the fans of that team in their market. And then the rest of the world pushes it up even further. Whereas if you don't have that beginning, even if it's only like 20% of like the fans of the market, if you don't have that at all, prices are just going to be lower no matter what.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if you're in the top 10 pipeline.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You get those fans that are rich of teams that just buy those cards and just want them.
Yeah.
If there's not too many people that just want them and are just buying them to be able to resell later.
Yeah, I don't know. Bowman First is just a whole different game, I feel like. Now, like for the flagship stuff and all that.
It is, but I know a lot of Brewers fans that buy a ton of Brewers prospect autos not for reselling. And that's the type of stuff that pushes Brewer prospect autos up because they just love their Brewers prospects. So, not saying every fan base does it, but I definitely know that the Rays fan base probably doesn't.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, moving on. James Wood, number 7 here in the MLB Pipeline, and we will pull up his Fangraph stats real quick. All right, so 20 years old. Obviously, the big thing about James Wood, 80 grade raw power. He is 6'6". And here he is, 232 in AA, 325, 492, 119 WRC plus. What's interesting here is that the lower we go, the worse the WRC pluses are getting in AA, right? Jackson Holiday's was like 170. Jackson Chourio's was a little bit above that, or lower than that, but still decent. And then what was Jackson Chourio's? Actually, I better check that just to make sure.
Yeah, it was quite a bit. But I think it's just because of the type of player that they are. Like if you're more of a power hitter, like it's tougher. I don't know.
Oh, 108. All right. So 108 for Chourio, 119 for Wood, 125 for Caminero, 170 for Jackson Holliday. If you want another reason why Holliday is insane, all these guys are the same level, same age, or even older than Holliday, and yet Holliday is unbelievable. But James Wood is
Holliday
still putting up
158.
Who's 158?
Holliday.
Oh, it was 170 overall, but 158 in AA.
Correct.
Thank you. James Wood still putting up solid numbers. Now, a bit alarming, obviously, 32% strikeout rate in AA. His walk rate dropped from A ball to AA by 3% and his strikeout rate rose by 5%. A bit of a concern, obviously, and yet still you buy this type of player all day long because the numbers aren't that alarming and the baseline numbers are still good. And he's also 6'6", 240 pounds dude who could be hitting 50 home runs a year.
Yeah. This dude has such a high ceiling. It's incredible. Like he is like an 5 tool. Like it could get nuts. Like he could be like an Ellie De La Cruz.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you take that all the way out. Now, question for you: 5 tool. Do they have to all be plus to be 5 tool in your book, or do they have to be average or better? If say James Wood is hitting 275, 280 average and walks 10% of the time, but strikes out 30% of the time, is that is one of the tools, hit tool? Is that a 5 tool player, or is he a 4 tool player with a below average hit tool?
Personally, I'm all OPS these days.
Yeah, but OPS can be skewed.
True.
Right? If you're like a power...
a Luis, like a Arias.
Yeah.
no power there, but his OPS is high because his batting, like it's
his on base percentage
yeah,
is amazing because his average is amazing, and so like what I'm trying to say is like you can get guys who have a 900 OPS but a 300 on base percentage.
true.
Is it valuable that they're hitting the ball hard every single time and making solid contact and hitting a bunch of extra base hits? You betcha. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're a 5 tool player. So that's what I'm trying to get down to is what is your qualification? Because like for
Yeah,
me, I do think there's a chance James Wood could be a 5 tool player, but I would imagine that he'll probably be a 4 tool player with the 1 tool not there is the hit tool. Because even if it's average, I don't necessarily consider that to be 5
yeah,
tool in my book.
yeah. No, I feel it. It's tough because things have changed so much, like even within the last 5 years. But I think if you're hitting over 275 batting average with with 30 plus, 20 plus homers, 25, 30 home runs plus, and you're snagging some back, like if you got speed, good outfield, like a good
Yeah.
outfield presence.
And it doesn't even have to be stolen base speed for
Yeah.
speed. If you
The
just
speed.
are really good at taking the extra base on a
Yeah,
single.
like there's so much to that. And I think the thing that I don't know, I've since this kid debuted with like the Padres, remember when we did the breakdown of that, was it 2022 Bowman Chrome?
Bowman?
Like
Bowman.
Bowman,
Baseball.
yeah. I have been a fan of this kid because I think he's just the ceiling is so incredibly interesting. I think the Nats, as crazy as it sounds, they are interesting. I play fantasy baseball, so I dive more in the numbers, and then I watch quite a bit. And Keibert Ruiz has been decent, and CJ Abrams has been
Really good.
improving like crazy. Now that is another 5 tool player. I think scary.
And
But
at the
anyways,
top of the lineup there with
he's
CJ.
good. He's got power too.
Yeah. That's and playing shortstop. Like
Oh,
that's one of those guys where like I was pretty down and out on him.
he's so
And
young.
it's one of those again, we've talked about it, and yet I have those biases. Like I never really liked CJ Abrams as a prospect because I just didn't think he had the power. Um and now you look and it's like, yeah, you never know. Orlando Arcia this year broke out at the age of 27, 28.
Protection in the lineup.
True. You never know when a guy is going to break out. It could be any
Yeah.
age. And so for CJ Abrams, who got called up at 20 and is
Young.
now
Like, yeah.
21, 22, like, I mean, this isn't shocking development. And yet I didn't see it coming because I was prejudiced against him because I was always upset about his prospect rankings due to his lack of power.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It was sneaky with them because they were projecting his power because they kind of knew what he was going to become just by his swing. Some of the metrics, not the stats necessarily, but the metrics kind of prove it. But think about it, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry, one last, just think about, I think they got like kind of that Reds mentality of like the flow of things. If they're bringing up Cruz, like if you look at their AA lineup right now, Brady House, Drew, Dylan Cruz, James Wood, who is the Robert Hassel.
Yep.
And a few others, they're all in AA. I think they put them all in AA on purpose because then they're all going to they're going to move them all the way up, and then they're going to slowly trickle them in. And they have the pitching staff's actually kind of sneaky up in the big leagues with Gore and Gray,
and not Steven Strasburg.
And yeah,
he retired today.
That was nuts. But I think that's why I'm very curious about James Wood because I think he's going to be right now. The situation's horrible if he was a little bit older, but I think he's going to be the last bit to that puzzle where it could be interesting if everyone gets called up and they have a solid core up in the big leagues and he's the last one to come with the ceiling he has.
Question for you, or I guess a statement for you. So outside of Dylan Cruz, who was the number 2 pick, could have been number 1, right? CJ Abrams trade. Keeper Ruiz, trade. James Wood, trade. Okay, they drafted Brady House. Robert Hassel, trade. Right? They don't have those guys to trade anymore that they got all of this talent in. And by and large, their drafting has been atrocious. Mackenzie Gore, trade. Josiah Gray, trade.
Oh yeah.
Their drafting has been atrocious. Has that changed now? Because like Dylan Cruz and Brady House are good, but they're also first round picks and really high first round picks, not like back half of the top or the first round picks. So for me, like the Reds, the reason they're good internationally, they're hitting on guys. In the draft, they're hitting on guys, and not just in the first round. And then also in trades, they're hitting on guys. So they've been doing a little bit of everything. Maybe not as much in the draft. Matt McLean was a first round pick, right? Other guy, Christian Encarnacion Strand, was a trade and everything. But they've been doing a little bit of all of that. Whereas I look at the Nationals, and Matt McLean was a pretty high draft pick, and so are the Nationals guys. But like they need to start, for me, they need to start hitting on some of these other guys as well. These second rounders, these third rounders, these fourth rounders, these 10th rounders, whatever it might be, these international signings before I say to myself, yeah, I'm excited about them. Because right now, to me, it just feels like, oh, we had a really good players that we traded away and got some good players in. And also we're so bad. It's really hard to fail when you have the second pick.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you bring up a good point. A lot of these guys they did bring into trade, but also at the same time, you have to, I don't know, it's hard if you don't have a core, it's hard to bring young guys in because then they'll just fail. Like I saw with the Tigers, they had so many great young prospects come up, no protection in the lineup, and then their confidence gets shot like a torque. He's figuring out this year, but it's like that had such
20 plus home runs now.
Yeah, like this year, now he's got Riley Green. Like there's people kind of protecting him, but that has such a huge aspect to it. I think they did a great job by dismantling the MLB team, by trading what they could, get what they could. But here's the thing, though, like you said, drafting in international, they're actually great in the international market. They have a lot of low-key players. I just went to their top 30. They have this kid, Dalen Lyle. Now, the stats, they're not going to jump off the page, but they have the ceilings, right? You can only really project the ceilings and like what they could become. They're very young, where they have almost like another wave after this AA core that they basically traded for. They have their major league core, they have their AA core, and then behind it is going to be their like organic growth, like their organic draft and international play. They got Dalen Lyle, he's in high A. They have Christian Vaquero. Remember him? Big kid. Like, who knows what will happen to him, right? Like
now, here's the thing about Vaquero. He was what, the second, third, the highest signed international prospect in their thing. So like that's the type of thing I'm talking about. Is like I would expect a Vaquero. I don't want to sound pretentious. I just kind of like, Elijah Green just hasn't done as well as people are expecting. Vaquero hasn't done as well as people are expecting. And we've seen this before with the Carter Kaibooms and other guys where it's like, I just don't trust the Nationals to develop talent.
It's true. I don't know. There's some players on this list, though, that I personally like put some money into because I think they're interesting. Like, and I usually, me, I don't do that unless I actually. Now, Vaquero, I haven't put $1 on that kid. I've never seen anything that I personally am like, ooh, like super interested about. But he is very young, and who knows, dude? Like the scouts see way more than we do. But I do think there's some players on this list that could be major league players. Really, that's what the goal is, to find how many major league players can you find, even if they're not a star?
You don't need stars. You need a couple guys to be stars, right? But you also just need depth.
But you got to also like their major league team, like the money that they spent on like the veterans, the free agents, like they got nothing for it. You got Patrick Corbin, you're paying quite a bit, is worse than league average. You got Strasburg,
7 years, 245 million for Strasburg, who threw
like
31 innings on that contract before retiring. They signed it before 2020. So we've gone 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. That's 4 years of the 7-year, $245 million contract, 31 innings.
that's tough. So like once those fall off, and let's say you grab, you have more money to play with, and you grab, I don't know, 4 or 5 free agents, like at half the value of like a Strasburg. You don't have to get the top guys, but like serviceable players to build.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the big thing. Like you can't, okay, no Max Scherzer, none of those guys are going to come sign for the Nationals for a while. Because you don't have the Steven Strasburgs in place. You don't have the Bryce Harpers in place. You're expecting them to get those guys in place with the Dylan Cruzes and the James Woods, right? But until that happens, they're not in place. But can you go sign, like the Tigers signed Eduardo Rodriguez? Not saying that's a smart idea, but can you sign an Eduardo Rodriguez, somebody else, to a couple of decent deals and get them in there to go along with Josiah Gray? All of a sudden, the team's starting to look a little bit better and everything. But I'm still stuck on the point that it's been really hard to trust. Like outside of Juan Soto, who have the Nationals called up that has been successful, that was homegrown? So we're not considering Keibert Ruiz. We're not considering CJ Abrams. We're not considering Kenzie Gore, Josiah Gray. Like homegrown guys, drafted, developed, and pulled up by the Nationals that were like expected to be good and were in fact good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because when they were competing, when they were contending, I don't know. I can't remember, but maybe they probably traded away a lot of their prospects, or could have. I don't know what they got, but
let's get a lit. Okay, so Dylan Cruz, Elijah Green, Brady House, they're still there. Cade Cavalli, he's good. All right, he's good. Jackson Rutledge, how's Jackson Rutledge doing? He's pitching in the majors, right?
I'm not sure.
Mason Denneberg, Seth Romero, Dane Dunning, Carter Kaiboom, Eric Fetty, Lucas Giolito. They traded him away. 2013, they didn't have a first-round pick. 2015, they didn't have a first-round pick. I mean, I guess there was a tough stretch in there where they drafted. The tough stretch was Eric Fetty, Carter Kaiboom, Dane Dunning, Seth Romero, Mason Denneberg. Like that's a 6-year stretch, 5 guys, not a ton to write home about.
That is true.
But then from there, it has been a lot better, at least from a name perspective, if not right now, a production perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that team's interesting. I think they're doing it the right way, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of confidence to trade away your Jackson Rutledge has not pitched in the majors this year. He's in AAA, 40 innings, 4.65 ERA. But he's kind of behind the 8 ball because he missed 2020 and not a ton of innings in there year over year. 15 innings in 2018, 37 innings in 2019, no innings in 2020, 36 innings in 2021. And then 97 innings in 2022, 109 innings this year in his first taste of AAA and AA. So like that's a tough career so far. But anyways, they had the courage to trade guys like Juan Soto away. Like there's a lot of teams that would not have been able to pull that move off.
Angels.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. So I do hope they become successful, and we'll go from there. All right, I'm not going to pull up the thing. Evan Carter, number 8 on the list. Oh, and James Wood, real quick on the prices here. James Wood refractor PSA 10, last sale $875. So he's right in line with Junior Caminero. For prices $900 there as well. The last one before that. Let's talk Evan Carter. We talked about him a little bit last week, so we don't need to talk about him too much today, I suppose. Evan Carter is interesting to me for a lot of reasons. One, it appears from the outside looking in that he just does a lot of things well, but no one thing spectacularly. And this is coming from a guy who has not gotten to watch Evan Carter play. I don't know. The sound off his bat might be different, right? Who knows? But just looking, you can look at his prospect report: 55 hit, 45 game power, 50 raw power, 60 speed, 50 field, 50 future value. And then you also have 16% walk rate. That's super nice. Don't get me wrong. That's super nice. 23% strikeout rate. That's not too bad. 172 ISO. That's not too bad. 360 BABIP. That's a smidge high, obviously. 283 average, 413 on base, 454 slugging. We're talking about an 860 OPS. If Evan Carter is a guy that runs 400 on base percentages and mid 450 slugging percentages, like we're looking at right now, he's basically like what Christian Yelich has turned into, right? Not a ton of power, but will give you, 10, 20 home runs, bunch of doubles, hit the ball hard, and get on base. That's a very solid player. But Christian Yelich is not MVP Christian Yelich from a couple of years ago. Christian Yelich is just very nice, really good, happy with him, Christian Yelich. Do you think a profile like that is worthy of the number 8 prospect in baseball? Because there's a huge floor here. The floor here is massive. Like, it does seem like Evan Carter is going to be a very capable, very good outfielder in the MLB that will probably run 3, 4, 5 win above replacement years due to decent defense, speed on the base pass, eye at the plate, and some pop. But that's not MVP upside. The rest of the guys on this list: Jackson Holliday, Jackson Chourio, Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, Ethan Salas, Junior Caminero, James Wood. They have MVP upside.
Yeah. I think it just kind of comes down to, like, what is this top 100? Like, what is the list? Is it off of, their like future value? Like, is it, I don't know. Like, I think that's more, I guess I've never even thought about that, like what the actual list is. But on Fangraphs, they make a list, they make a top 100, and it's based off of future value. Mm-hmm. And they give Evan Carter a 50, and the rest of these other guys are,
60.
60s.
Yeah, 50 future value for reference for people listening on Fangraphs would be like prospects like 50 through like 150 type of thing, or maybe 75 through 150. Whereas everyone else above those numbers would be 55 future value, 60 future value, and so on.
Yeah. But I think you hit it right on the head. It's like he has a very high floor, and you almost have to put him in the top 10 on this list for MLB because of his stats, right? Like, he's done. Yeah. It's like,
stats are really good.
Like, really good, but it's like where is the upside? That's why out of James Wood, Junior Caminero, Jackson Chourio, and Jackson Holliday, I own a lot of those 4 names because of their ceiling, right? I don't know. I might have some Evan Carter, but it's like lower or something. Great player, but it doesn't move the needle for the Cards where you're looking for that, the boom, like in my mind.
I 100% agree with you. It's Brandon Nimmo is awesome player.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Do I want to invest in Brandon Nimmo? I don't. Right? But I would love to have Brandon Nimmo on the Brewers.
Exactly.
I would love to have Evan Carter on the Brewers. And that's where, I was really wrong on Nick Madrigal. I thought he was going to be just a very solid MLB player. He has not turned out to be a very solid MLB player. I guess not being able to hit for any power at all is really a detriment to a player's profile.
Yes.
But there's certain guys where it's like, yes, Bryce Terang. I wouldn't want to invest in Bryce Terang, but I love having Bryce Terang on the Brewers. And Evan Carter kind of feels the same way to me, where it's like everything he does is really good. Like Christian Yelich. I like Christian Yelich. I wouldn't mind having some Christian Yelich cards for my PC, but I wouldn't be buying Christian Yelich cards to invest in right now. And obviously, a lot of that has to do with age, 31 years old and everything. But for me, like you can see here, Evan Carter refractor auto 499 PSA 10, $430. You've got 500, 455. Obviously, substantially lower than the guys ahead of him on this list. Half the price of the next closest prices on this list are Evan Carter's refractor auto PSA 10s. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with what we've been getting at, Jimbo. It just isn't a profile of a guy with huge upside. There's immense value. If he keeps running 400 on base percentages or even high 300 on base percentages with solid defense, speed, and some pop, yeah, I would love to slot that guy in my outfield and just consistently say, yeah, he's probably going to run an 800 OPS every year with good defense. Sweet. I take that all day long, every day, but I don't take it in cards.
Yeah.
And
I think he's in a perfect situation with the Rangers. They're going to be contending for the next 3 to 5 years, and there won't be a lot of pressure on him. But the way I look at it is Ezekiel Duran for the Rangers is having a phenomenal year for him. It's kind of putting up the same numbers what I think Evan Carter will put up. Obviously different. I'm not comparing cards really, but more of just like the output. And he doesn't even get talked about. Like in fantasy, he's awesome, but in cards, doesn't move the needle. Evan Carter will have some chatter about him because he's on the top 10 and stuff. But for card wise, the upside is just, it doesn't excite me to go out and spend $430. I'd rather save that money and buy a bigger ceiling and take the risk.
I cannot agree more. Stud player, it's not for us.
And which is funny because the next one, Jackson Merrill, a lot of the same, to me at least, I get a lot of the same feeling towards him. And I was actually a lot higher on him last year. He's actually having a great year.
So funny you say that because I would agree to an extent, in which, we're talking about a shortstop who doesn't on paper have a ton of pop, though he does have 14 home runs this year, which is pretty good, more than I ever expected him to hit in a single season. But he doesn't strike out. He walks a decent amount. He's been getting to above average power in Double-A. He's hitting 306, 362, 493 with only a 322 BABIP. It's not like it's obscenely high where it's like, yeah, that's going to go down. So for Merrill, it's all right. They don't just give out 70 hit tools at Fangraphs, right? That is something that is impressive. He should be able to stick at shortstop. He has a 70 hit tool. He obviously has good walk rates and great strikeout rates. And he's not getting lucky, and he's running above average power. But he needs where he's different than Evan Carter is that he can play shortstop.
Yeah.
And that's a super huge qualification there, because an outfielder is an outfielder if you play center field, left field, or right field. Shortstop is shortstop. I mean, it is the second most premium defensive position in all of baseball behind catcher. And catchers don't get value, but shortstops get absurd value. If he can keep getting to some of this power that he's been getting to this year, and I don't know if he can, I don't expect him to, but 14 home runs, which means, he's got a couple more in him throughout the rest of the year. You're talking about above 15 home runs, maybe even broaching 20 home runs. That's unexpected power. And I'm not saying he'd do that in the majors, but to at least see it in there. And we're also talking about a dude who is, you can see here through all the ads, Fangraphs, 6'3", 200-pound shortstop. He's not like a small dude. He's a tall dude. He's a little bit lanky, 195 pounds for 6'3", but he's a tall dude. He adds on, 10, 15, 20 pounds as a 6'3" frame. He could get into some actual some actual power with that eye at the plate.
I think with him though, like, see, this is where the eye test comes into play. It's looking at his swing. It's like, okay, does his swing have potential to lift?
And it clearly doesn't, right?
I've never seen it. So like and then it's like, okay, if he does switch up his swing to get more power, how much is he going to sacrifice the other stuff
with the walk rates yeah. Now, I usually, without having gotten to look at it, I can just go to his prospect thing and say, all right, if his swing was geared for power, they would give him at least the same raw power as game power.
I agree.
Right? And they don't. They give him a 45 raw power and a 40 future game power. So they definitely don't expect him to be getting to all the power he has, and they don't expect him to even have average power despite his frame. But just looking at the frame and looking at the unexpected power numbers this year, it's at least interesting enough where I wish I had access to a scout to say, hey, what's going on here? Yeah. What's up with this and why? Because it's interesting, and it's a very similar profile. Look, it's a very similar profile to Evan Carter, but it's shortstop.
Yeah. But so this is, we always talk about when to sell, right? And it's never a one size fits all for any player.
Correct.
He's one that I like to, I remember last year, like, I was like, oh, he's an interesting one because I had a feeling he was going to shoot up the top 100 because of what his skills were. And then like right now is the exact kind of time I would be like selling. Okay, he's 8 overall, top 100. Sell while you can.
Yeah.
And then like the Jackson Holliday and stuff, like I was like, man, he's so expensive. Go ahead.
Especially because he's not going to be playing shortstop when he gets called up. If he gets called up by the Padres, because there's Xander Bogaerts and his gigantic deal there.
True.
And he's not going to be playing third base because there's Manny Machado and his deal there.
Yeah. And then Kim's been playing great, so he's going to be at second.
Yep.
So that's what's tough about it. That's why they traded Abrams. But I mean, the Padres team, I don't know what's going to happen because Soto doesn't seem like he wants to be there. And I don't know, they got something going on there. It just doesn't seem right. But going on the selling part, like,
you think it's Manny Machado?
I don't know. I always had weird. I've only met him a few times. Never had an issue with him, but something about him seems like everywhere he's gone. I don't know.
Yeah.
But who knows? You never know. But I just think that they're too top heavy, right? They have too many really good players, and they don't have real depth.
I mean,
but not to get into the Padres.
They have their studs, but they also have their Jake Cronenworths and their Kims, and it's like even if you don't have, say, depth where it's like all 25 guys are major league players, or you got major league players in AAA ready to get called up. A Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth, Kim, Grisham, like that should be a lineup that you only need a couple guys hitting at a time to really carry the load. I watched the Brewers win a ton of games this year with literally only Christian Yelich and William Contreras doing the damage.
Yeah, but they get guys that grind the at-bats. Like, it's the stuff I always bring up, like working the counts. Like, dude, they're at catcher. Before they brought Gary Sanchez in.
Yeah, it's tough.
Like, that's a free out every 9 batters.
Yeah, that's tough.
Like, before,
but still, okay. I know he's not wearing down players, but it's just so much talent. It just doesn't make sense, which is why there has to be something going on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
like when you get that much talent together, like what if the Dodgers just started failing? Everyone would be like, "There's something going on."
Yeah, and I think that's why the Dodgers didn't want to resign Machado, dude.
And the Orioles traded him away. I don't know, Anyways, we won't get into it. Jackson Merrill prices here. You can see now there's a big caveat here. This does not have the first logo.
Yeah.
And as we know, first logo matters, even if it's his first auto. Corbin Burns didn't have a first logo on his autos, and his autos were never as expensive as one would expect from a Cy Young Award winner.
Yeah.
And a top 5 pitcher in baseball. Jackson Merrill doesn't have the first logo. His price is $270 August 22nd on auction, 201 August 15th, 250 July 28th. If you put a first logo on there, I don't want to say it would necessarily double in price, but it would definitely go up in price. Probably pretty substantially. I imagine it'd probably be around $400 as opposed to $270 if there was just the little first logo on that corner.
Yeah, it would definitely be around Evan Carter. That's a shame.
Yeah. Now the question is, if he has nowhere to play, do you buy, hope he gets traded for somebody, and then hope the excitement is there, or do you think leaving the Padres, the excitement disappears?
I think there's not much excitement as there is. I think if someone trades for him, they're like, who is this guy? He's going to have to perform really well. I think you could take that money and buy someone deeper on this list that we're going to talk about next time.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's players that are value plays. It's either you buy the cream of the crop or you find who's going to be the next and flip that way. I think like your Evan Carters, the Jackson Merrill, I just don't – I think there's better value.
Yeah. I mean, I would let's look at Jordan Lawlar. Oh, $868. That was really – 2021 is really bad condition, though. Let's go on from Jackson Merrill to Jordan Lawlar, number 10 on the list, last one on the list. And you can see here, 21 years old, plays shortstop in AAA, expected to have power, expected to have speed and fielding, not expected to hit a ton. Something interesting here that I heard from our friend down on the farm was that they were working on his eye at the plate, or I forget exactly what he said, so do not quote me on this. But he said him and Jackson Chourio, they're kind of working on the same things. Plate discipline, plate patience type of stuff. And so his numbers might not have looked as good at the start of the year, but this is a dude who really picked it up since May. I forget the date, May 25th or something. Lawlar really picked it up and obviously got called up to AAA and has been doing really well in the early going in AAA, despite it being his first, week of games, walking more than he's striking out, hitting 280 with a 406 on base and a 520 slugging, despite that lowly 263 BABIP. This is a dude who figured it out in the middle of the year and has carried it into AAA for his first taste. He's no longer number one overall potential prospect, Jordan Lawlar. Like, that's not going to happen anymore. I did think that was a chance for that to happen last year around this time. That's not the case. But he is still really good. And we're talking about a dude who's going to be joining a very fun, young, decent Diamondbacks team. My question for you, Jimbo, is do you think the Diamondbacks now have changed? Like, nobody really wanted to invest in the Diamondbacks, but now Corbin Carroll's doing amazing. Shout out Aaron, Slab Stocks Aaron, who owns the Super Refractor Bowman Chrome First non-auto and the Super Refractor Topps Chrome non-auto.
He does?
Yeah.
He's a baseball guy now?
Well, he just had an option to pick up the option to pick up the Corbin Carroll in a trade at the National. So he did, and then he picked up the Topps Chrome because why not pair the Topps Chrome non-auto with the Bowman Chrome First non-auto? It's awesome.
I didn't know that.
Cool. Yeah, so very cool. And do you think Corbin Carroll has we talked about this a while ago, you really only need one guy to kind of change the trajectory of your team. Now, we talked about the Rays earlier. Wander Franco did change them, but the prices still aren't necessarily as high as you'd expect. But before Wander Franco, Rays prices were atrocious. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Corbin Carroll will have changed the trajectory of the Diamondbacks to where anybody after him, people are like, yeah, I have to have that guy because it's the Diamondbacks, and look, Corbin Carroll's amazing. And therefore we should invest in Jordan Lawlar? Or do you think that Jordan Lawlar is going to get called up, but Corbin Carroll is going to be so good and so in a league of his own that nobody's really going to pay attention to the secondary and thirdary pieces on the Diamondbacks because Corbin Carroll is just way better?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. I think.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions.
I do. I have switched my view around a lot, like where it's like, oh, if they're a good prospect, it doesn't matter what team it is, what it is, like you can buy and sell, but you can. I have switched my thoughts, and it's they have to, like, the team above them has to be doing pretty well, like the major league team.
Yeah.
I saw it with Riley Green. Riley Green's a great player and all that, but when he got called up, the excitement kind of was like deflated throughout the league, because it's like, who's going to watch the Tigers? Like, they're,
Not
you know,
me.
yeah, it's like, it's tough, if you're not a Tigers fan. So it's like, I think that's a huge factor. And I think with Corbin Burns, not just Corbin Burns, not Corbin, Corbin Carroll.
Corbin
Yeah,
Carroll.
going blank on the.
So we can talk about Corbin Burns again if you want.
I know you. No, I scratched the itch. But I think the Diamondbacks being fun to watch, I think when the other rookies get injected, it only is like more fuel to the fire. That's why I think Jackson Holliday is really interesting, because Gunnar Henderson, like Adley had a lot of hype. His cars never really went nuts, probably because he's a catcher. College back.
And he was already expensive because he was the number one pick.
Yeah. But Gunnar Henderson, like before the season this year, like an orange true auto was like $2,000 raw. And I remember seeing stuff like that, and I was like, that's crazy. But I think now, like with that team being good, you inject Jackson Holliday into the excitement, like inject like certain players into a good team. That's why I brought up the James Wood thing with the Nationals. I think that's going to be a lot bigger, like even an Ellie De La Cruz. Like if he was on, like if he got called up last year at this time,
not a ton of excitement. But the Reds were a pretty good team. And the reason for that was they called up Matt McLain first, and Matt McLain started hitting and was the middle of the order bat they needed. And then you call up Ellie De La Cruz. Now, the Reds haven't been the hottest team, and they're bordering on missing the playoffs entirely. But you still have your young pitchers that are getting healthier, and you still have prospects in the minors.
Yeah.
Noelvi Marte called up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why I've been switching my focus on a lot of how I'm buying prospects. Is I'm looking more at the big grand scheme of things. And now that we got through all 10, like if you go through this list, the top 10, they're pretty young. They're really young, and they're all in AA or higher. Mm-hmm. But I think like there's been so many more. The major leagues have been getting so much younger. The teams have been, that I think the minor league teams, like AA used to be really good baseball, and it still is, but I think it's kind of brought down a notch. So MLB, like the teams want their players in better competition, where it's like, oh, we're going to keep these guys in high A usually at this time period, but instead they're putting them in AA, because AA is really high A from 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh yeah, because there's way less teams.
Yeah. And it's just they're cutting a lot of the scrap, like they cut a lot of the minor league. Remember how a year or two
there was multiple rookie level teams per team, complex league teams. Then they had A-ball, high A, AA. So you could slowly bring guys up because there was plenty of spots for them, and now there's not. So the guys that can't really play and are just organization filler, those guys are just gone.
Yeah.
They no longer get the right to play baseball. Which stinks, because like if you can extend your baseball career as a player and you don't care about money, you do that, and now you don't get the chance to. But as a like organization and band, those guys, those were never making the majors. Yeah. One in a blue moon made the majors, and now they can go play in. The Brewers do this really well. They can go play in independent ball.
Exactly.
And then the Brewers scour those independent ball teams and pick up guys all the time and get. It might not be extended careers, but the amount of guys that the Brewers have picked up that have had a nice flash in the pan relief season where they throw like 50 innings of 2.5 ERA ball, and then they're not good again, but like that's worth that one season, grabbing a guy out of independent ball and building him up the ladder.
Yeah. But I think that's what with getting, kind of condensing the talent, I think we're starting to see players get called up faster. But also AA might be kind of, like we're going to see players getting into AA a lot faster and maybe sitting at AA.
Which is what has happened to Jackson Chourio.
with a
He
lot of
sat there
players.
all year, and we're like, after his hot July, it's like, why wasn't he called up AAA? But
Because I think it's good enough talent that you just leave him there.
I have one last question for you, and then we should call it because it's been an hour and a half. All right. So Jackson Holliday, number one prospect, Jackson Chourio, Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, Ethan Salas, Junior Caminero, James Wood, Evan Carter, Jackson Merrill, Jordan Lawlar. All right. All of these guys are in AA. Let's assume that Ethan Salas becomes the number one pick because he's 17 and just up in AA, and they're probably not going to call him up super quick, especially as a catcher. But let's assume that the rest of the guys are likely going to get called up pretty quick. Holliday, Chourio, Skeens, Cruz, Caminero, Wood, Carter, Merrill, Lawlar. They're all in trajectory called up next year. There might be some wiggle room in there with some number one overall, but it's not really a number one overall. It's just he fell into the number one overall for like a month and then was out of it type of guys. So Ethan Salas is probably the next true number one overall prospect when all of these guys around him graduate.
Yes.
But if it's not him, or if he does get called up quickly, as a preview of next week, who do you think is next? Because Marcelo Meyer's going to get called up quick. Pete Crow Armstrong is going to get called up quick. Colton Cowser has already been called up. Brooks Lee's in AAA. Colson Montgomery. So, like, there's a list of the 3, 4, and 5 draft picks from this past year: Wyatt Langford, Max Clark, Walker Jenkins. If it's not Ethan Salas, I assume it's going to be one of those guys, and they're all getting put in this year's draft. So this is a very interesting spot these guys are in. They were top draft picks, but they're in the teens, but they could easily, due to call-ups next year, be any one of them could be the number one draft pick or the number one overall prospect next year by this time.
Well, I know who I would pick if we're
Max
picking
Clark.
from, but for the next episode, since we're going to talk about them in the next episode, if I had to pick out of the 1 through 10, I truly do believe it's Caminero because I do not think they're going to call him up.
But even if they don't call him up this year, some of these other guys also aren't going to get called up.
I really do think for sure Holliday, Chourio, Skeens, Cruz, Salas obviously won't. I think
I would be flabbergasted if they call up Chourio this year. Like
not this year. I'm talking even like I don't think this year at all.
Oh, okay. Well, then this year, not concerned. I think they all get called up next year. Caminero is getting called up next year.
Yeah. But I think he's the last one of the group where next year, where they do the updated list, Caminero will be on that.
But he'd have to leapfrog Ethan Salas.
But that's the thing, though. Like Ethan Salas, he's been great, and he's way ahead of his time. But like, I don't know. That's hard to put him at.
We're talking about a kid who can stay at catcher, who's in the same league as a dude we're talking about, but 2 years younger. Now, is he playing well? No, not entirely. It was definitely like what are you doing? He played 9 games in high A.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta at least put up some kind of stats to be first overall. They're not going to put someone first overall in the top 100 pipeline with not hitting.
They put him 5th.
I know, which is already crazy. Yeah. They're probably like, Padres, what are you doing, man? Like, let him hit.
Anyways, I'm assuming from where I stand, I'm assuming Junior Caminero is getting called up next year by this point, by August 24th of 2024. And so that's what I'm kind of getting at, is by this point next year, August 2024, 2024, all of these guys are going to be gone. This top 10, except for Ethan Salas.
Sure. So, I guess he would have to be.
And 11 and 12 are going to be gone. 14 is going to be gone. 17, 18, 19, 20 are likely going to be gone, and 20 is already gone. So there is literally 4 players in the top 20. 4 players in the entire top 20 that will likely be on this list at this time next year. Think about that for a second, how much change there's going to be. And so if you are looking for potential top prospect, like I'm going to buy him and see what happens, Termarr Johnson, he's probably going to be a top 10 prospect next year. if he keeps up what he's doing, and he's doing pretty well, right?
Recently,
What'd you say?
I bought a lot of him golds lately.
Yeah.
I think, but I mean, we can get into that, but that's for the later episodes.
Yeah, it is. You're right. We should probably call it.
Yeah,
we should probably call it.
Morgan's calling me.
All right. Thank you everyone for watching today's Cards on the Pond. We appreciate you listening. Thank you, Jimbo, for joining in, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.
Deuces.
Or next week.